Good morning, everyone. Welcome into Morning Invest on this Saturday, little Saturday special edition, because we've got some stimulus news that I wanted to bring to you today. We've also got some debate news that we're following out of the White House and the president giving his first speech last night, a public appearance on television, and whether or not we're actually going to see another rally unfolding this weekend. President Trump going back on the campaign trail in a last-minute hurrah. By the way, how many of you caught my last video with my theory about why I think President Trump is intentionally trying to lose this election? I don't know that it's a popular theory among Trumpers, and it's not meant to be any kind of a partisan video. I just believe that there's enough facts laid out in front of us to make that determination about President Trump wanting to throw this election, basically. That's exactly what I think. I think that he wants to move on. I think he wants to start his own media network and be a fly in the ointment for a Biden presidency and get himself out of $400 million in debt. That's what I think. So that's my little conspiracy theory. But we'll see. We've got a few months. We can see if I'm right. So good morning, everyone. Welcome in. It's a Saturday, so we're doing our members only chat today. So if you're trying to chat and you're not a member, then you won't be able to chat. You can still watch and enjoy the show. But all of our chat members today, anyone who has a little Grover icon, anyone who's in, yeah, that's you. Anyone who's got a green name is a channel member. So thank you to all of our new channel members that we have today. It's very easy to become a channel member. All you have to do is this. Just go to morninginvest.com/join to support independent journalism. Oh, I have a little side announcement to make. We just launched. It's under review right now in the iTunes store. If you want the audio version of the podcast is going to be rolled out. So please check that out. So you can check out, just go to iTunes, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts, and you'll be able to get the Morning Invest podcast after our live show is done. So exciting stuff. All right, let's get to some of the stimulus news this morning, shall we? We do have stimulus news that unfolded overnight, and it's still breaking in this hour. We're going to hear more from Washington this morning. But the latest news on the stimulus front is the White House surprised us. After a week of going back and forth, telling us that they were ending negotiations, I think the White House, President Trump, saw the writing on the wall, and what a disastrous move that was for him to call off stimulus negotiations and watch the stock market plunge. They're still pretty far apart on numbers, but the number this morning is $1.8 trillion from this White House. So President Trump last night tweeted this, letting us know that, hey, go big or go home. COVID relief negotiations are moving along. Go big, he says. To which a lot of people said, you're full of crap. Scroll through Twitter and just read these responses. Oh, greatest president ever. And then, you're full of crap. Must have thick skin to be on Twitter. Even if you're not the president, you have to have thick skin to be on Twitter. So, White House spokesman Alyssa Farah, who stepped in for the COVID sick Kayleigh McEnany, told reporters that the White House was offering around $1.8 trillion. Now, that's different than the 2.2 that Nancy Pelosi had wanted, and the Democrats on their side. They'd come down from 3.4 all the way down to 2.2, and now we're only about $400 billion apart. Only. A person familiar with the proposal said that it includes $1.88 trillion in spending, about $400 billion of funds that will be reallocated from the unspent money from the earlier relief legislation, bringing the total cost to about $1.5 trillion. So the total cost 1.5, but they'll be reallocating money that's just sitting there not being used. This could be a win. Any deal, of course, though, is going to face major hurdles right now in the Senate. This is the main hurdle, is Mitch McConnell in the Senate. And whether or not Mitch McConnell will actually bring this to the floor, it remains to be seen. We'll get there in a moment, but I want to go further through what's going on with these negotiations. Pelosi and Mnuchin spoke for another 30 minutes yesterday afternoon about a GOP plan that was attempting to address some of the concerns that Democrats have. So they are continuing to work on this. I have to say I'm surprised. I believe that Nancy Pelosi would rather watch you not have food on the table in order to have President Trump lose this election. So sit back and basically say, hey, we're going to screw you guys over so that we can win this election. I honestly believe that. And I think the same thing is true of Senate Republicans. They've tired of spending any money. They've lined the pockets of their big corporate donors, and that's all they needed to do. Sort of hush money, all that PPP money, all that fraudulent money that went out to those guys, and they're done. And they don't want to spend any more money. And I think for President Trump, for his matter, this is a last-ditch Hail Mary effort if he truly wants to win an election by being able to send out direct checks, stimulus checks to the American people. But Nancy Pelosi says, I don't want any checks going out with your name on it. So I'm not going to pass a standalone bill where we're going to send out checks to the American people that just have your name on it. You could look at that and say, oh, really? So you don't want to help the American people, Nancy? You just want these checks? You want all of these other things in a bigger, larger bill, but you're not willing to just sign a bill, legislation that would just get stimulus checks sent out to the American people. No, they don't want that, because that would be political suicide for them. Because everyone in America would get it. Well, everyone who qualifies would get a check with President Trump's signature on it right before an election, and that's not going to happen. So, among their concerns, state and local governments. Testing and tracing legislation, money for rental assistance and landlord assistance. So some of those pieces would be in this puzzle. Democrats last week passed that $2.2 trillion aid package. It was a scaled down version of their earlier $3.5 trillion package. Mr. Mnuchin had previously proposed a $1.6 trillion offer, and that they said the administration is willing to come up to this number. Their goal is to try to keep it below $2 trillion. So we're getting close, folks. I'm actually surprised by this. However, once again, good old Mitch McConnell has to throw a big bucket of water on the whole thing. So let me tell you what Mitch says in a second here. So Mitch decided to put out that down there in Kentucky, he's not even around right now. He's out of Washington, down in Kentucky. And he basically said, I'm going to get his direct quote if I can. He said, unlikely deal. He said, it's going to be very difficult for us to get anything done before Election Day. So he doesn't see them being able to bring this up in front of Congress before Election Day. He thinks that this is going to happen, if it happens at all, would happen after Election Day. Good luck with that. Good luck with getting it done after Election Day. He says, in the next 3 weeks, it's unlikely. It's unlikely in the next 3 weeks. He said, I'd like to see us rise above like what we did back in March and April, but I think that that's unlikely in the next 3 weeks, he said. McConnell and Republicans have pushed to swiftly confirm, though, Supreme Court Justice nominee Amy Coney Barrett, and arguing that the next president should choose who succeeds the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Democrats have said, but he doesn't want to do that. So President Trump tweeting out that, look, we have COVID relief negotiations going forward. Go big. I just don't understand why he is now suddenly. I mean, come on, let's be honest. Why is he suddenly now back on the rampage now to try to pass stimulus negotiations? Mitch McConnell says shortly before the president tweeted, Larry Kudlow told Fox Business Network that Trump had approved another effort for Mnuchin to take to Pelosi. Kudlow, who is not part of these aid negotiations, said Pelosi and Mnuchin would talk again on Friday, and they did, another 30 minutes. But again, they would have to strike an agreement that McConnell would take to the Senate floor. And if you know Mitch McConnell is not focused on this. He is more focused on getting Amy Coney Barrett passed. My goal, my goal, I want to get a justice on the Supreme Court. It's my legacy. I'd like to see us rise above, but it's not going to happen. I think the president is good news, yeah, but blah, 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 blah. Deputy dog. So, looks like negotiations are going on today again. So Nancy Pelosi expected to speak with Mnuchin today. We could actually see a framework come out this weekend, folks. That's why I did a show today. We could actually see a stimulus bill come out this weekend. And then all eyes will be on Mitch McConnell. I think this is the moment for President Trump to show some kind of leadership. I mean, he hasn't done it yet on this issue. Maybe now, 24 days before the election, maybe now he could. Maybe now he could come out and say, all right, here you go, Senate Leader Mitch McConnell. We worked with Nancy Pelosi. We managed to pull this off. Ball is in your court. Get it done. Will he do it? He holds the power. Mitch McConnell is the most powerful person in Washington. Make no mistake about it. It's not the president. It's Mitch McConnell. So if he can actually get his senators, his conservative caucus, who said they don't want to come over $500 billion, to actually come to the floor and get something passed, we could see direct stimulus checks, $1,200. And I know that's not enough. That's what it is. I know it's not enough. For many of you, it's going to pay just a 1 month's rent, to maybe a little bit in behind payments, and then it's out again. But at least it's something. I just saw that Mike Pence fly come through here again. Get away. So, Mitch McConnell down in Kentucky, would he actually bring the Senate back from vacation to try to get this passed through ahead of a Supreme Court hearing? Good luck with this 3 weeks before the election. So that is the very latest on the stimulus. Let's talk about the debates now. Well, we got news overnight that the second debate is now done, canceled, gone, dead. President Trump last night, speaking for the first time on Tucker Carlson's show, did a really kind of bizarre, he had like a doctor show up. So he kind of almost did like a televised, I'm going to see how you're doing moment with a doctor through TV asking how he's doing. It's really interesting. Question is he still contagious? Because we don't know. The White House is still being cagey about these results. He doesn't know his current test results, he says. He says he's no longer taking steroids and he feels great, but admits he's not tested negative for COVID. But he's going to go to a rally? How many of you would go to a rally with a person you know has COVID who's not wearing a mask? Dr. Mark Siegel last night was on Tucker Carlson's show, basically listening to the president describe his feelings. He says, I feel real good. I feel really strong. He said, you know, what's your chief complaint right now? He said, oh, look, I feel really good. I feel strong. He says he's no longer taking that dexamethasone, that steroid. And he said, you know, a lot of people think it could have some psychological side effects, such as confusion and aggression. He said, I tolerated it very well. I don't take it anymore. It was pretty short term. And he says, what drugs were you initially on? He says, right now I'm medication free. I'm not taking any meds as of 8 hours ago. He says, which frankly makes me feel good. I don't like medication. Then when he was pressed on the issue, he said, I think I'm on pretty much nothing. So is he really? On Thursday, he said he was going to be tested again on Friday, but he still hasn't. Wouldn't you think that the president would be tested like every few hours? I mean, the fact that there's like no test going on, it's stunning to me. They tested his lungs, he says. They tested these lungs. They have incredible equipment at Walter Reed. He says, in fact, they said, no, you can leave your jacket on. I said, I'll take it off anyway if you want. He said, initially I had some congestion in there, but ultimately it tested good. With each day it just got better. He said, I didn't feel very vital. I didn't feel like the president of the United States should feel when he first got it. I didn't feel strong. But he said he says he's back. But again, no debate, no second debate, no virtual debate. There's a lot of concern that we might not see another debate at all, which I'd be upset about. I think the American people deserve to hear both of these candidates talk about foreign policy, which is what the third debate would be about. There is a MAGA rally, which is now being said at the White House. The president is planning a speech at the White House. He's going to hold his first public event since testing positive. Dr. Fauci has labeled that Amy Coney Barrett Rose Garden ceremony announcement as a super spreader event. So the president's own doctor now calling it a super spreader event. This event, this MAGA rally, which this is unprecedented. He's going to hold a campaign rally from the White House up on the balcony of the White House on the South Lawn. He said people are worried inside the White House about this event, but he's brushed it aside. He's like, no, don't worry about it. He says people are going to get immediately better like I did. I feel better now than I did 2 weeks ago. It's crazy, he told Rush Limbaugh. He said, I recovered immediately, almost immediately. I might not have recovered at all from COVID. I don't even know what that means. So he's going to host an event from the balcony on the South Lawn. Like, it's first of all, you don't hold rallies at the White House. You're not meant to use the White House as a political backdrop during a campaign. But this president has basically done everything different, right? Than we've ever seen before. I'm upset about these debates, though. I'm upset that we're not going to see another debate. We probably won't see a third debate. I would be surprised at this point, which is a huge loss for President Trump, who at this hour is down significantly in the polls. Let's talk about the latest polling out today. Joe Biden is up by 10 points in the latest polls, with a 52.1% lead in the new nationwide national average polls. So these are a national average of each poll's quality, sample size, and recency. He's up 52 to 41. And this is like again, pulling in all of the different polls into one. From the Ipsos poll, from the Harris poll, the Pew Research poll, the Morning Consult poll, Fox News poll, CNN, all of it. An aggregate gives us a 10-point lead right now for Biden. And Ted Cruz last night, a little coffee break. Warning, he says it's going to be a bloodbath. Republican Senator Ted Cruz says that the GOP is facing a bloodbath of Watergate proportions, he says. He says, I'm worried. It's volatile. It's highly volatile, Senator Ted Cruz says. If people are going back to work, if they're optimistic, if they're positive about the future, we could see a fantastic election. We could see the president getting reelected with a big margin, Republicans winning the both House of Congress, and I think that's a real possibility. But I also think if on Election Day people are angry and they've given up hope and they're depressed, which is what he says Pelosi and Schumer want them to be, then I think it could be a terrible election. I think we could lose the White House and both houses of Congress. It could be a bloodbath of Watergate proportions. Well, all signs are pointing in that direction, Senator Cruz. I think you better be planning for it. It is going to be a bloodbath, which makes it even more unlikely that we're going to see some sort of a stimulus after Election Day. So you think President Trump or you think Mitch McConnell is going to want to pass a stimulus if he knows now he's a lame duck majority leader in the Senate? No way. So I think this stimulus bill, I think this is our last chance at stimulus. Right now, $1.8 trillion from the White House, using about $300 billion of the money that's already sitting there. So the price tag comes in at about $1.5 trillion. They've got to get this done. I think you're hearing now enough from the Federal Reserve officials and others telling the president, when all of these airline layoffs, et cetera, telling members of Congress, what are you doing? You've got to get this through. You've got to pass this. Even if an agreement is reached, as Mitch McConnell said, and it may be the process around it, literally the writing and all of that takes a while, he says. The first item of priority for the Senate, he says, is the Supreme Court. So to get a bill written up, to get it passed in 3 weeks, it's a tall order. And he says also a significant proportion of my Republicans are not convinced that we need it. He thinks we're doing fine. He says this, a significant percentage of his Republicans say we don't need it. But you have senators who are running tight races right now that know that they better get a stimulus through. Their constituents are going to likely throw them out, like Joni Ernst in Iowa. She called Mr. Trump on Friday and said, you've got to get a stimulus through. She's going to lose in Iowa. She could very well lose in Iowa. If they do not get a stimulus through, she's done. Well, so is Trump, by the way. Pelosi, meanwhile, on MSNBC just yesterday said that she planned to review the administration's spending plan and provide specific policy proposals. And she says, look, the bill needs to include testing, contact tracing, and isolation protocols, and money for vaccine distributions and development. It has to be in there. So one of her firewall is we can't have a COVID bill that doesn't have additional money in here for testing and tracing and crushing the virus. She's been saying that over and over and over again. And of course, a number of economists have warned that if we don't get another stimulus package through, a relief package through, could undermine this very slippery recovery. If you've been watching my show for any length of time, you see what's happening. You see what's happening with the permanent job losses in this country. 2.4 million now are at that 6-month window where they've been out of work. And you know how difficult it is to try to find a job after you've been unemployed for 6 months. Your skills wane. Potential bosses on your resume, they wonder why you've got this large 6-month gap. I know that there's some leniency with the COVID, obviously, and everyone knows what's been going on, but nonetheless, skills fade. And that's been the real concern from the Federal Reserve Chief, that we saw that during the 2008-2009 recession as well. So this slowdown is happening, folks. Employers only added 661,000 jobs in September. So without another stimulus bill, these layoffs could become permanent. More businesses will close. All of the features of a typical recession are in place rather than just like a small shock like we experienced in the spring. And, stories this morning, I was reading the Wall Street Journal this morning, and you have, McDonald's is doing fine. Chipotle is doing fine. A lot of those larger chain restaurants are doing just fine, keeping their kitchens open and burning and churning. But so many small independent restaurants, they just cannot fill. They're just getting crushed right now. They don't have the capital to keep going, and they are about to go under. And I don't know what more of a signal needs to be sent to these people to wake up in Washington and pay attention. So that is the very latest on this Saturday. We could open it up for some chat, but before I do that, go ahead and smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. This is our members only chat day, so only members can chat right now. So, hey, we got a new member, number one, Miss Shiny. Nice to see you. Very easy to become a channel member. Just go to morninginvest.com/join, and just for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support independent journalism. You can support the stories that they won't really cover on the mainstream media. They're going to give you one-sided spin. You see this story covered this morning on MSNBC or other places. You're going to see how Nancy Pelosi's been pushing for a stimulus, and she's been the champion of the people, which is somewhat true and mostly a lie, because they would love to see Trump lose. And they're not going to pass just some little piddly stimulus that sends checks out to people with the president's name on it. That's politics. It's a shame, because so many of you could use an additional stimulus check, but she's not going to do that, because that would help President Trump. And if you watch Fox, you'll see how Nancy Pelosi's been holding everything up, and they're not telling the truth about Mitch McConnell. They're not going to tell you the true story here, which is Senate Republicans are holding this up. And Mitch McConnell's the real problem in all of this. He has been for months, as we've been calling attention to here on the show. Rhonda is a new channel member. Thank you so much for becoming a channel member. Let's see in the chat today, Saturday chat. So subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, do all of those nice things. When you leave a comment, it really helps us also. And I read all of your comments. So let me pull up the chat window here and see what we got going on. Stephen Pickett thinks that Mitch McConnell's a racist. KKK. Clayton, why are the others not at the negotiating table? Again, Mitch McConnell is not concerned. He's focused on the Supreme Court. And basically, he doesn't have the caucus members right now to support a stimulus. So he's just like, you guys figure this out, and then maybe, just maybe, I can strong arm some of my caucus members, and we can try to get something through. Perhaps. Carrie King says, I'm just so tired of the virus BS. Just open the country back up and let us go back to some sort of normalcy and try to pay our bills, since they won't give stimulus to the people. Well, in a lot of places, they've already tried to reopen. But when you have restaurants that are only at like 20% capacity, that's why the United States is now considering, or a lot of restaurants are considering, putting time limits to how long you can sit at a table, because operating at 50% capacity, they can't have people sitting there for 2 hours. They got to get them in and get them out. So we've tried to reopen in certain areas, but the problem is we never truly locked down. So reopening without ever having a proper lockdown, because the United States never did, like Neil Kashkari said from the Federal Reserve in Minneapolis, he makes that point. We never closed down. Clayton, will you do an election night show? It's possible. Yeah, I might like to try to do an election night show. Just depends. we've had almost 7 million people vote already in early voting. So we might be able to call the race. What I'm worried about is it ends up winding up to be like an election week, and I don't want that. Vince Scott says, how long do you think we have until America goes under? Where do you think where we can't recover? Well, Vince, it's a great question. I mean, if you see the latest numbers right now, the federal government is bleeding capital. It's taking on more debt than it's producing in revenue from tax revenue. How is that sustainable? The Fed says our borrowing capacity is fine, so we continue to borrow money left and right. How long can that go on? $22 trillion in debt? What's Biden doing since there's no debate? Derek wants to know. He said, has he said what he wants to do? Well, he said, some of the updates are that they want to do a town hall, that they want to do their own town hall. But I don't know that that's been officially signed off on yet. Now that the debate is done, the second debate, maybe they will. I think President Trump wants to hold his own rally on that night. So let me check my sources here. I've got some messages here from... Okay. I was wondering if this was going to happen. Okay. So I put in a message to a couple of my... So it looks like Nancy Pelosi right now is criticizing this new $1.8 trillion offer from the administration. So we've got more breaking news at this hour. Nancy Pelosi is now criticizing the offer from the administration. We've just got a letter to her colleagues. It says the new $1.8 trillion plan amounted to one step forward, two steps back, she says. 2 steps back. Let me pull up my letter here. White House. The White House offer, though, so we're getting more details about this White House offer. Interestingly, this White House offer is expected to include $1,000 per child as part of the stimulus checks. That's up from the $500 per child approved in the CARES Act. So this would be more money. This is a smart political tactic right before the election by President Trump. So he can go out on Twitter and say, hey, I brought you $1,000, not $500 like Democrats wanted. If this goes through, it would be a huge, obviously, it'd be a huge if, of course, because it would mean it'd be $4,400 for families of 4 who make under $150,000 a year. And it would be on top of the $3,400 for the first round of stimulus checks earlier this year. So that would be a huge amount of money. Just trying to get more information on what Speaker Pelosi is saying about this right now. You might be saying to yourself, yes, but didn't President Trump say that his COVID bill would be bigger and better than anything the Democrats wanted? Why is it less than what the Democrats want? Like, what? I don't get it. What happened? And you'd be right in that assessment. That's exactly what the president said. But I think the reality in the Senate is he knows that Mitch McConnell doesn't have the votes. Again, this comes back to Mitch McConnell in the Senate. Any way you want to slice this, you want to blame it on Nancy, what her price tag, you want to blame it on President Trump for his price tag, it doesn't matter. Senate Republicans don't want anything. Except for those people who are running for re-election, like Joni Ernst. So this new letter right now from Nancy Pelosi says that this is one step forward, 2 steps back. And this is quite a negative letter. Let me read it. See if I can bring this up here. All right, this letter is just out. Let me read it to you. So Nancy Pelosi says, Dear Democratic colleague, on Friday, the Trump administration returned to the table with a proposal that attempted to address some of the concerns Democrats have in the coronavirus relief negotiations, blah, blah, blah. She says the proposal amounted to one step forward, two steps back. She says when the president talks about wanting a bigger relief package, his proposal appears to mean that he wants more money at his discretion to grant or withhold, rather than agreeing on language prescribing how we honor our workers, crush the virus, and put money in the pockets of workers. At this point, she says, we still have disagreement on many priorities, and Democrats are awaiting language from the administration on several provisions as the negotiations on the overall funding amount continue. She says the key concern is the absence of any response on a strategic plan to crush the virus. We cannot safely reopen schools, the economy, and our communities until we crush the virus with the science-based national plan for testing, tracing, treatment, and isolation, and for the equitable and ethical distribution of a safe and effective vaccine once developed. The strategic plan is contained in the HEROES Act. She said, please see the Energy and Commerce memo, which is attached. She says, from the start, the Trump administration refuses to honor our heroes and respect the safety of our workforce. The funding for state and local remains sadly inadequate. At the same time, she says, the Trump proposal recklessly leaves behind workers by ignoring the need for strong OSHA protections to keep our workers safe as they risk their lives and jobs to keep us safe and keep the economy running. We are urging the administration to support our strong OSHA language, which requires OSHA to issue an enforceable emergency temporary standard within 7 days that covers all workers from COVID-19 infections. Unfortunately, they have a liability provision that is reckless in how it ignores safety in the workplace. At this point, she says, the Trump proposal is insufficient in meeting families' needs, in stark contrast to the HEROES Act, which secured tens of billions for direct relief and refundable credits. At the end of September, in preparation for restarting our negotiations, I had previously written to you about what the HEROES Act would mean for families in their kitchen at their kitchen tables. For a family of four earning $24,000, second page. So this is just the second page. There's only 2 pages. I'll just finish this. Direct relief, that would be $9,800 when including the earned income tax credit and child tax credit. The Trump proposal, hello. The Trump proposal would eliminate earned income tax credits, child tax credits, and child dependent care tax credits. Earned income tax credit, HEROES Act, if the parents lost all of their income in 2020, they could receive up to $5,900 in EITC based on their earnings. So it goes on from there. Unemployment insurance, the HEROES Act, she says, contains strong funding for protecting the 5 million workers at the risk of exhausting all of their regular unemployment insurance. The Trump proposal, $200 billion less than what Democrats proposed, which experts tell us is what is needed. Our HEROES Act is a tribute to the leadership. Once again, blah, 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 blah. And so these and other issues are unresolved livelihoods in the life of our American democracy. We hope to make progress soon. Updates will continue to be ongoing. There you go. That's a letter from Nancy Pelosi, just released. So, the questions this morning. So she's worried about struggling families, yet it's going to be her fault that nobody gets anything if she's not willing to just come to the table on some of this. I don't know that it's going to be her fault. People see that in the Twitter threads on this story, but honestly, it's going to be Mitch McConnell's fault because none of this is going to get through him unless he brings it to the floor of the Senate. So you can blame Nancy, President Trump all you want. I think the numbers are still trillions apart from what Senate Republicans are looking at right now. That's just the nature of the beast. Yeah. Here's a good question that Jake Sherman is asking this morning in Politico. Here's a negotiation thing to think about. If you're Pelosi, why not hold out for everything that you want? And how eager Mnuchin and Trump are for a deal. Like, hey, we're not moving on any of it. We want testing and tracing. We want money for unemployment. We want other technical aid, etc. We want hazard pay. We're not budging on it. And see if President Trump budges on it. At the end of the day, the Senate's not going to move on it. So it's this little chess game here 3 weeks before the election. I would be stunned if we see this pass, but it is some good news that they're continuing to negotiate. She finishes her letter by saying, hey, negotiations are continuing. We're continuing to talk. So that's the very latest today on the stimulus front. And the news out of Washington at this hour, up to the minute news, with a response now from Nancy Pelosi. And what my sources are telling me could be in this thing, which is $1,000 per family per child, which would be up from $500 to $1,000. So that's more money than what's allocated in the HEROES Act. So potentially $4,400 for a family of 4, according to what I'm seeing right now. So we'll see. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this special Saturday edition. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all of our new channel members today. We had so many new channel members join. If you'd like to become a channel member, just go to morninginvest.com and slap up morninginvest.com/join. And you can become a channel member for as little as a cup of coffee once a month. So thank you so much for your support. Much love to all of you. I hope you have a wonderful Saturday. My kids are being super annoying, but I love them. Much love to all of you. We will see you back here on Monday, unless we have some big news tomorrow, in which case I'll do another show tomorrow. So we'll be back here on Monday, 9 a.m. Eastern, with only 22 days till the election at that point. Have a great Saturday, everyone.